Hi, everybody. How have you all been lately? Welcome back to the distance learning program. It's great to be here with you, and I hope you enjoy the video. What we're going to do today is we're going to start in the Ventures3 book. So please open your Ventures3 book to page 118. It's lesson 9E on page 118. And the focus of today's lesson is that we're going to read and write about an emergency, and we're going to use questions to organize a story. Read and write about an emergency and use questions to organize a story. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about is an emergency. Let's brainstorm about the different types of emergency that you can think of. So one type of emergency would be health emergencies. And think about the different types of health emergencies that a person might have. One would be a heart attack. A heart attack is when a person's heart stops pumping, and it's a very serious emergency. It needs medical attention right away. What's another type of emergency? A stroke. And a stroke can be caused by an aneurysm, and that's when a blood vessel breaks or pops in your head. So that's called a stroke. And that's another serious health emergency. What are some other kinds of health emergencies? Well, a person could have a violent allergic reaction. So that would be another type of an emergency. Now, there are other types of emergency as well that don't include health emergencies. One could be a fire. A person's house might catch on fire, or a flood. A flood is when the water level rises, like during a hurricane, as there was in New Orleans years ago, and the water rises and it totally covers a floor of the house. So that's called a flood. Another type of emergency would be a tornado. And that's when a funnel cloud forms and the wind is very strong and it can destroy everything in its path. That's called a tornado. And one other kind of emergency that would be weather related would be an earthquake. And you can imagine what an earthquake is. Earth is the planet that we live on, or the ground, and quake means to shake. So an earthquake is when the ground shakes violently and it can destroy buildings and start fires. So these are all different types of emergencies. Now, in today's article that's on page 118, we're going to read about an emergency. And when you think about writing an article or a paragraph about an emergency, you want to answer some of these questions that are shown up here at the top of the page. So if you look in part 1A, you can see the words that are in bold type. It says who, what, when, where, why, or how. So who did it happen to? That means name the people that experienced the emergency. What happened? What kind of emergency was there? When did it happen? The time the emergency happened. Where? That's the location. Where did it happen? Why or how did it happen? What was the reason for the emergency? Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to think about the answers to these different questions as we read this article. So as we read the article, try to determine what are the answers to these questions, and that way you'll be able to see that the article includes all of the information in order to answer these questions. So let's begin by reading the article. Fire in our backyard. Now that gives you a very big clue about what the emergency is because it's in the title. It's a fire in the backyard. It says, one evening last summer, my husband and I were preparing dinner together. My husband was cooking outside and I was setting the table inside. Suddenly, my husband ran into the kitchen and shouted, "There's a fire in the backyard." I ran outside and saw fire in the bushes next to our fence. I was really scared because my 70-year-old parents live next door. Luckily, my husband acted quickly. He called the fire department and then started putting water on the fire. The firefighters arrived quickly and they easily put out the fire. They said a coal from the barbecue started it. My parents were very surprised when they saw the firefighters. They were watching the news in the living room, and they never knew there was a problem. My father said, "Let's go back and watch the news. Maybe we're on TV." Now, if you have any questions about any of the words that are in the article, you can either look up the words in the dictionary or look at the context of the rest of the article and see if you can figure out what the word means. You might wonder, well, scared. What does scared mean? Well, if there's a fire in your backyard, you might be afraid. So scared would be a word that could be synonym with afraid. So let's look on page 119 now and see if we can answer the questions in part B. The first question is, who is the article about? Well, that's pretty easy. The article is about a couple and their parents that live next door and two firefighters, because the two firefighters came and put out the fire. So that's who the fire is about. The next question is, when did it happen? Well, if you look at the very first sentence, it says, one evening last summer. So that means that the emergency happened last summer in the evening. The next question says, where did it happen? If you look at the article, it says that my husband ran into the kitchen. He came in from outside. He had been barbecuing in the backyard, and he said there's a fire in our backyard. So that's where the fire happened. It was in the backyard. And it says, I ran outside and saw fire in the bushes next to our fence. So the fire was in the bushes next to the fence. The next question. It says, what were the people doing when the emergency started? According to the article, it says that the couple was preparing dinner. The father was the husband was outside cooking on a grill, and it says that the wife was setting the table inside. And the couple that lived next door that's the wife's parents, and they were watching TV. The next question says, what was the emergency? Well, as I said already, the emergency was the fire in the backyard. The next question says, why was the writer scared? According to the article, about halfway through, it says, I was really scared because my 70-year-old parents lived next door. So she was afraid that the fire might spread and it might cause damage to her 70-year-old parents and their home next door. So she was afraid of that. Then it says, how did the article end? Well, it says the firefighters arrived quickly and they easily put out the fire. So everything worked out well. The firefighters were able to put out the fire and not too much damage occurred. Now let's move to the next part, Part C. It says, write a plan for a narrative paragraph about an emergency that happened to you or someone you know. So we normally don't spend a lot of time writing in the class because it takes a long time, and we don't want to spend too much time individually doing things when we can work together as a group. But since you're at home right now, you could write a paragraph about an emergency, and when you're writing it, you can answer these questions that are below. It says, who is the paragraph about? You need to answer these questions as you're writing your article. It says, where did it happen? When did it happen? What were the people doing when the emergency started? What was the emergency? And how did the paragraph end? So you want to answer the questions that are shown here, and if you can answer all of those questions about the emergency that happened to you, then that should give you a lot of information that you can use in the paragraph. So if you'll be interested in writing a paragraph about an emergency, you can text it to me or email it to me, and I'll look it over and make any corrections that are necessary. Okay, so now that we've finished with lesson 9E, we're ready to turn to page 120 and look at lesson 9F. It says this is a life skills reading, so we're going to be looking at this chart, the orange chart at the top of the page, and we're going to try to learn how to interpret the information in the chart. So the first thing you want to do when you're looking at a chart is to look at the title to see what it's about. And the title of this chart says, Best States Rankings for Public Safety and Pre-K to 12 Education. And it has the year 2015 in parentheses. So a ranking is when you order things from best to worst, or smallest to greatest, or greatest to smallest. So it's when you put things in order. That's ranking. And it says best states ranking. So that means we're going to be looking at the ranking of the different states in the United States for public safety and pre-K to 12 education. So if you look at the left column, it says best states for public safety. And that means low property crime rate, low violent crime rate. So the criteria for determining the best states would be the lowest property crime rate and the lowest violent crime rate. So that tells you what the ranking on the left is. Now, if we look at the ranking on the right column says best states for pre-K to 12 education. So pre-K is the year before kindergarten, and 12 means the 12th grade. So it's all of the education a child receives from the year before kindergarten, which is the year before first grade, and all the way to 12th grade. And so the best states for these types of education are shown in the right. So that's what it tells you the rankings are for the two columns. Now, you can see that they have 10 states that are ranked in each column. So it shows the best states for public safety on the left and the best states for the primary education on the right. So that the education from pre-K to 12th grade, these rankings are on the right. So let's take a look at the questions and see if we can answer the questions. The first question says, which state on the chart, which states have the highest public safety record? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to look at the column on the left because that shows the rankings in of the states as far as public safety is concerned. So the first possible answer is Vermont and Maine. Well, if you look at the top two states in the left column, which is the column that ranks public safety, the best states are Vermont and Maine. So that would be the answer because those are the top two states. Now, my book says Vermont and New Hampshire, but clearly New Hampshire is in third place and Maine is in second. So I believe the answer in the book is incorrect. The answer, I would say, is Vermont and Maine, which is A, because they hold the top two positions for the best states in public safety. And that's exactly what the question asks: which states on the chart have the highest public safety record? So let's look at number 2. Which statement is true? So we have to look at the statements and see which one is true. And when we find one that is true, we can move on to the next one to see if it's true, because the last question is, or the last possible answer is all of the above. So it might be all of the answers are true, in which case we would have to circle all of the above. But let's see, the first one says, New Hampshire has the best ranking for pre-K to 12 education. Well, pre-K to 12 education is the right column, and the state that has the highest ranking is New Hampshire, so we know that A is true. Let's look at B. It says New Hampshire is in the top 5 in both public safety and pre-K to 12 education. So if you look at the left column, you see that New Hampshire is ranked third. Well, third is in the top 5. And if you look in the right column, New Hampshire is number 1. So therefore, B is true also, because New Hampshire is in the top 5 in both columns. Next, it says Connecticut and Iowa are not in the top 5 for public safety. And remember, the public safety ranking is the one on the left. So we have to see if Connecticut and Iowa are in the top 5. I do not see Connecticut and I do not see Iowa in the top 5. So that answer is correct also. So A, B, and C are all correct. So we would choose the last answer to be the correct answer for the question. It's all of the above. Next, let's look at question number 3. How many states are listed only once in this chart? How many states are listed only once? So what we have to do is we have to see, of all the states that are listed in the left column, do they or do they not appear in the right column? Well, you can see Vermont is number 1 and number 5, so that's not listed only once. Maine appears in the left column, but I don't see it in the right column. So that's only once. So Maine is 1. New Hampshire, it's in both columns, so that doesn't count. Idaho is in the left column, but not in the right column, so that's 2. New Jersey is listed both places. It's 5 here and number 2 on the right, so that doesn't count. Virginia is only in the left column. It does not appear in the right column, so that's 3. Connecticut is in both. That doesn't count. Wyoming only appears in the left column, so that's 4. Rhode Island only appears in the left column. That's 5. Kentucky only appears in the left column. That's 6. Now let's look at the right column and see if there are any that are over here that do not appear in the first column. Massachusetts is not in the first column, so that's 7. Iowa is not in the first column, that's 8. Maryland is 9. Minnesota is 10. Nebraska is 11. And Illinois is 12. So I see 12 states that are listed only once in the chart. So I would say the answer is B, 12. The book says 6, but it doesn't count the ones that appear in the left column that are not in the, it does not count the number of states in the right column that do not appear in the left column. So I would say 6 is not correct because I counted 12. Then 4 says, which statement is not true? Vermont and New Hampshire are listed in both public safety and pre-K to 12 education. I see Vermont and New Hampshire here on the left, and here's New Hampshire, there's Vermont on the right. So that's true. They're in both columns. Wyoming is 8 in public safety. Public safety is the left column, and Wyoming is number 8. That's true. Kentucky is 10 in public safety. Well, that's true also. Kentucky is right there at number 10. So all 3 of those are true. So the question says, which statement is not true? Well, since D says all of the above, that would be incorrect as well, because they're all true. I would say the answer is none of the above. Not all of the above, but none of the above. So that should conclude the lesson for 9F. And thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great day.